If you opened your fridge right now, I'd bet there's something sitting in there from last night. Maybe it's rice, maybe it's chicken, maybe it's that half a baked potato you wrapped in foil because it felt like the responsible thing to do. And in a few hours, you're going to pull it out, throw it in the microwave, and eat it without thinking twice. I want you to stop and think twice, just for the next few minutes, because there are 4 very common foods sitting in millions of refrigerators tonight that don't behave the way we assume they do once they've been cooked, cooled, and reheated. Not because reheating is evil, not because your microwave is secretly poisoning you, but because a few specific things happen inside these foods between the first time you cook them and the second time you eat them, and almost nobody talks about it in plain language. I first heard this explained clearly by Dr. Fazal, and it completely changed the way I store my leftovers. Not in a dramatic, throw out your fridge kind of way, in a small, practical, oh, I didn't know that kind of way. And I think once you hear it, you'll feel the same. Before we get into it, if you're the kind of person who actually wants to understand what's happening in your own kitchen instead of just following rules blindly, go ahead and hit like and subscribe now. It genuinely helps this channel keep making videos like this, and it means you won't miss the next one. Okay, let's get into it. Let's start with the one that surprises people the most: rice. Rice feels like the safest food on earth. It's bland, it's simple, it's what you feed a sick kid. So the idea that rice could be the riskiest thing on this list sounds almost backwards. But here's what most people don't realize. The danger with rice was never really about reheating it. It's about what happens to it before you ever put it in the microwave. Raw rice can carry a hardy bacteria called Bacillus cereus. It's incredibly common, it's not some rare contamination, and cooking your rice does kill the active bacteria. But here's the twist. This particular bacteria can form spores, and spores are built to survive heat. They're basically tiny survival pods. So even after your rice comes out of the pot fully cooked, those spores can still be sitting in there, dormant, waiting. Now listen carefully, because this changes everything. If you cook a big pot of rice and then leave it sitting out on the counter for a couple of hours, maybe you got busy, maybe you forgot, maybe it just felt fine at room temperature. Those dormant spores wake up. They start multiplying. And as they multiply, they produce a toxin, not bacteria anymore. An actual toxin released into the rice itself. And this is where it gets even more interesting. That toxin doesn't care about your microwave. Reheating kills bacteria. It does not destroy this particular toxin. So you could reheat that rice until it's steaming hot and the toxin is still sitting right there in your bowl. This is actually common enough in food safety circles that it has a nickname, fried rice syndrome, because it shows up so often with restaurant fried rice that's been sitting around. The fix is almost embarrassingly simple. It's not about avoiding rice, it's about cooling it fast, within about an hour if you can, and getting it into the fridge instead of letting it sit on the stove or the counter for half your evening. Do that, and rice is completely fine to reheat the next day. But rice isn't the only one where timing matters more than the reheating itself. Let's talk about something almost every household has in the fridge right now: leftover chicken. Chicken gets a bad reputation, but here's what's actually going on. The risk with chicken was never really reheating breaks it down into something dangerous. The real story is about temperature and time, the same way it was with rice, just with a different bacteria doing the damage. Usually Salmonella or Campylobacter, the 2 most common culprits in raw poultry. Here's the part that surprises people. Cooking chicken thoroughly the first time kills those bacteria in the meat. That part's done, that danger has passed. The new risk window opens up after cooking, while the chicken is cooling down and sitting in your fridge. If chicken sits out too long before you refrigerate it, or if your fridge isn't cold enough, bacteria that survived in tiny amounts or that landed on the chicken from a cutting board, a hand, a countertop, can start multiplying again in that cooked moist meat. Cooked chicken is actually a very comfortable environment for bacteria to regrow in, almost more comfortable than raw chicken sitting in the fridge, because all the natural defenses of the raw meat are gone. So the mistake isn't reheating chicken. It's leaving it out on the counter after dinner while you finish watching something, or packing it into a container while it's still warm and sealing the lid tight, which traps heat and moisture right where bacteria love to grow. But here's what most people don't realize about round 2 and round 3. Every time you reheat chicken, cool it back down, and reheat it again, you're giving bacteria another opportunity to multiply in that window while it cools. This is why food safety guidance is pretty consistent on this point. Reheat chicken once, eat what you're going to eat, and don't keep cycling the same batch through the fridge and microwave 3 or 4 times over a week. One good reheat, fully hot all the way through, no repeats. Now here's one most people have never even thought twice about, the baked potato wrapped in foil. This one feels harmless. It feels like the opposite of risky. A potato is a vegetable. It grew in the ground. What could possibly go wrong? But here's where it gets genuinely interesting. And this is the one Dr. Fazal talks about more than almost anything else, because it's so counterintuitive. Potatoes can carry spores of a bacteria called Clostridium botulinum, picked up from the soil they grew in. Baking the potato doesn't necessarily destroy every spore, especially deep inside a large potato. On its own, that's not really a problem. Botulinum needs very specific conditions to become dangerous. And here's the key detail. It needs an environment with no oxygen. Now think about what we do after we bake a potato. We wrap it in foil to keep it warm. Then, instead of eating it right away, we sometimes leave that foil-wrapped potato sitting on the counter for a few hours. Maybe it's a barbecue, maybe it's a busy dinner, maybe you just forgot about it. That foil wrapping creates a small, sealed, low oxygen pocket around the potato. Combine that with room temperature and time, and you've accidentally built the exact environment that particular bacteria needs to grow and produce a toxin. This is one of the more well-documented causes of home botulism cases, and it's almost always traced back to the same pattern: foil, warmth, and time. But here's what makes this one so fixable. It's not about avoiding foil, and it's not about avoiding potatoes. It's about not letting that foil-wrapped potato sit at room temperature. Eat it hot, right after baking, or unwrap it and refrigerate it promptly if you're saving it for later. Once it's properly chilled, reheating it is not the issue. And now the last one, and this is the one that gets debated the most: leafy greens, especially spinach. You've probably heard some version of this rule before, usually about baby food. Don't reheat spinach for infants. But here's what most people don't realize. The reasoning behind that rule is actually rooted in real chemistry, even if the risk level for adults is much smaller than for babies. Spinach, along with beets, celery, and a few other vegetables, naturally contains high levels of nitrates. That's completely normal and not dangerous on its own. But when cooked spinach is left out at room temperature or reheated and cooled repeatedly, certain bacteria can convert those nitrates into nitrites. And nitrites, under specific conditions, can go on to form compounds called nitrosamines, which is the part researchers have raised concerns about with long-term, repeated exposure. Now here's the honest balance part. This is why the strongest warnings are aimed at infants specifically. Babies have a different digestive system, less stomach acid, and a much lower body weight, so the same amount of nitrite conversion affects them far more than it affects a healthy adult eating spinach once or twice. For most adults, occasionally reheating spinach is not going to cause harm. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Food safety experts still generally recommend not storing cooked leafy greens for more than a day and not reheating the same batch multiple times, simply because that repeated cooling and reheating gives more opportunities for that nitrate to nitrite conversion to happen. So across all 4 of these, rice, chicken, potatoes, and spinach, did you notice the pattern? It was never really about the microwave. It was never about reheating itself being some hidden villain. Every single one of these comes down to the same 3 things: how long the food sat out, how it was cooled, and how many times it went through that cycle. That's actually the most useful thing I can tell you today. You don't need to fear your leftovers. You don't need to throw anything out of your fridge right now. You just need to shift one habit, cool your food faster, refrigerate it sooner, and try to reheat it only once. I genuinely love to know, which one of these 4 surprised you the most? Was it the rice, the chicken, the potato, or the spinach? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And I want to know if any of you have had a moment where you realized you'd been doing one of these wrong for years. And if this helped you look at your own fridge a little differently, do me a favor and share it with someone in your life who reheats leftovers every single day without thinking about it. a parent, a roommate, a partner, anyone who could use this. It might genuinely help them. Thank you for watching all the way through. I'll see you in the next one.